actually surprised that Tesla stock is down 0.65% at the time of recording this video, considering the markets are bouncing back pretty well. And we have some big news for Tesla. We'll discuss some of the key points that are causing Tesla to fall today, like some of the short sellers trying to get on top of the weakness that you did see yesterday. First, we should go over all of your breaking news, because I don't know if it's just me, but this looks like massive news. It says Tesla is in early talks with the authorities in the city of Austin, Texas, about its autonomous vehicle technology. This sounds like Tesla is in early talks about launching a robotaxi network in Austin, Texas. I don't know if it's just me, but that sounds like big news. I mean, all things considered, we're not even technically into 2025 yet, and if Tesla's having these talks now, it should be a possibility to launch robotaxis even in the first half of 2025, which would be ahead of expected schedule. Saia, one of the largest trucking companies in the US, has partnered with Tesla to introduce two of the company's Tesla semi-trucks to its fleet. Saia rigorously tested the Tesla Semi in its operations earlier this year and achieved 1.73 kilowatt hours per mile. Quote, our drivers were equally impressed, noting the smooth acceleration, comfortable design, and its ability to maintain speeds on steep inclines, even while hauling heavy payloads. This feedback underscores the enormous potential of the Tesla Semi. And let's just be honest, the Tesla Semi is not even a thought from investors today. US customers who purchase a new Model 3 using a referral code will now receive a $1,500 discount, but the buyer must take delivery by December 31st. This is up from $1,000, likely trying to just push year-end deliveries as high as possible. Wall Street is currently expecting almost 515,000 vehicles to be delivered in Q4. Now, we are going to get our delivery number for Q4 on January 2nd. So that is the next big catalyst for Tesla, but so far things look pretty good. Now, as you guys know, we get insurance registration numbers out of China on a weekly basis. So we have a pretty good idea of what China deliveries look like. They can vary a little bit, but we kind of know what those are going to look like. We kind of know what Europe's going to look like. The big wild card every quarter is the United States. We don't get any data from the US that is credible because Tesla really doesn't import vehicles to the US to sell them. So we don't even get import data like we would from, let's say, iPhone sales, right? That are shipped mainly from China. Like, we get data on a lot of other companies, but not on Tesla, okay? So I found one of the best ways to track what Tesla deliveries are likely trending in the US or how they are trending in the US is by simply Google Trends data. The more searches you have, the more vehicles Tesla is likely selling. And really throughout this entire quarter, you have been trending to the upside, and that continues up until today. The Cybertruck has recently fallen a bit from 61 down to 43, but the Model Y has went from 26 to 35, so that's really good. Model 3s went from 22 to 27, so that's good. Model S's went from 11 to 15. Model X's went from 8 to 11, so trending all in the right direction. And this is looking specifically at the US. If we look at worldwide search trend data, we pretty much get the same picture. Cybertruck at 65, Model Y at 63, Model 3 at 52, Model S at 24, which is actually a massive jump recently. The Model S was at 19, so it went up 5 points, which doesn't happen often for the Model S, and the Model X is even hitting a relative high as well at 16. So it looks like no matter what you're looking at, things look good for Tesla. Now, part of the reason for some of the volatility today in Tesla, as I mentioned, Tesla is down about 0.6%. Just within the 2 minutes or so I've been filming this video, Tesla went green and fell back down about 0.5%. So it's very, very volatile. And following yesterday's nuking of the stock, you were down over 10%. Some short sellers pounced on that. you had over 5 million shares that were sold short yesterday. Now, some of those are being returned today. You do have 1.52 million shares that are being covered on net, at least so far today. These numbers will change in the final hours of the trading day, but you have 371,000 shares that have been borrowed and 1.89 million shares that have been returned. That brings you to 1.52 million shares on net that have been covered today. I think we're just trying to, again, recover from that brutal day yesterday. And really, when it comes down to it, Jerome Powell was confusing yesterday. Like, is the economy weakening or is it strong? Is the labor market weakening too much or is it strong? Is inflation going to come back? Is it not? Are they going to cut rates at all next year? Are they thinking about raising rates next year? There was a lot of uncertainty there. And Tesla, generally speaking, being an interest rate sensitive, economically sensitive company, does not like uncertainty. I do, though, think it's a great sign that markets are bouncing back a bit today. The Russell 2000 is the underperformer. Again, with the whole interest rate, economically sensitive scenario we have here, that makes sense, right? Russell is up 0.15%. NASDAQ is the outperformer, up almost 1%. S&P 500 up 0.69%. The Dow is up 0.63%, breaking a 10-day decline for the Dow, a 12-day in a row decline for value stocks, the worst you have seen since the 60s. Okay, so markets were already weak heading into yesterday, and that could be playing some role as well into what's going on with Tesla. Tesla had been so strong in the last couple of weeks, even though the markets generally were very weak over the last couple of weeks. So maybe you're getting a little bit of a catch up with Tesla. But as I said yesterday, nothing changed. Like, the bull thesis for Tesla did not change. It was not dependent on interest rates. Okay. Now, if the Fed wants to raise rates or something next year, which I think the Fed's kind of opening the idea to markets slowly but surely that they may raise rates next year, depending on what inflation does. Besides a Fed that is raising rates next year, the bull thesis is not dependent on anything the Fed is doing. So I don't think the story changed at all from yesterday until today, right? So I think that is something worth keeping in mind, that yes, it killed some of the near-term momentum, but the bull thesis for next year did not change at all. And actually killing some of that short-term momentum may actually be a good thing long-term for Tesla. Now, the VIX spiked 75% yesterday. It's down 20% today. Okay, the VIX hit over 27, almost 28 yesterday. It's back down to 22, which is still elevated, and you're going to see elevated volatility probably for another day or two at least. But that's a good sign that people rushed into puts yesterday, and now they're selling out of those puts. They're getting back into some of those call positions that they had been previously in. Nonetheless, neither here or there, I still think it makes sense for short sellers to cover on their short positions into year end. So the big question at this point is, do we get a continuation of the gamma squeeze? Okay. And how many shorts cover on short positions? I still think you're going to see shorts covering, but if that's not coupled with a gamma squeeze, then it does become more difficult to get a larger rally, because that gamma squeeze tends to be very fluid and very liquid. We have 77.66 million shares that are sold short. If you get 30 million shares or so that cover, like, that can move the stock a lot as long as you have elevated volume from a gamma squeeze. But consider yesterday's volume of 150 million. I mean, if you get 30 million shares covering in a couple of day period, yeah, sure, that's going to move you up quite a bit, but it's not going to look like a typical short squeeze. Now, if you get that gamma squeeze that starts up again, that could be where things are exciting. And by the way, there is still about $34.2 billion sold short in Tesla stock, and short sellers are down 76% over the last 3 months. I don't know who would want to carry a short position in Tesla into next year. That just sounds crazy to me. Option activity today from hedge funds and institutions specifically, you've seen $217 million worth of options with a positive order value of 79%. So not as bullish as what we have seen. Even yesterday, you had a positive order value of 86%. It looks like the option activity yesterday was very positive. You just had a lot of shorting activity, and that's what really helped to drive some of that downside. And yesterday, you had almost $600 million get bought in Tesla options. Today, the positive order value is a little bit lower, but I still think that's good at about 80%. I mean, that's what? 1 out of every 5 options are bearish, right? So that's a good number. 4 out of 5 options are bullish, in another way to put it. So I think we will see tomorrow's data will also be important with PCE. If that comes in as expected or lower than expected, that's really gonna lift some of that burden potentially off of markets. And I would expect Tesla is going to now be hypersensitive around inflation data. If inflation continues to come in hot, Tesla is not going to do as well on those days or over the post couple of days after inflation reports, right? Hotter than expected inflation reports, because if we get enough of those inflation reports in a row, the conversation will start to be, is the Fed going to raise rates again? And that does hurt the bull thesis for Tesla. But again, as of now, nothing changed from yesterday. There's just more uncertainty from the Fed, but for Tesla specifically, the Fed was not a part of the bull thesis to begin with. It is being reported that Honda will present 2 prototype models in a few weeks that the company is planning to introduce to the global market starting in 2026. Honda will also introduce its original vehicle operating system planned to be adopted by the models. The Australian government now offers workers earning under $100,000 access to low-interest loans for EVs. Essential workers like teachers, nurses, and firefighters qualify too, regardless of income. For EVs up to $55,000, rates are up to 5% lower, saving $8,000 on a $40,000 loan over 7 years. And honestly, I think that's a pretty good government policy. Like, if you're gonna have a government policy, I think that makes sense. Tesla revealed today that Tesla Powerwall owners globally saved over $800 million on their utility bills in 2024, enough to buy more than 18,800 Tesla Model Ys. Walter Bloomberg yesterday wrote this on X. It says, Tesla could look to acquisitions to diversify. Tesla could look to acquire specific brands from Western car makers to diversify and expand its offering. Alpha Value's Adrian Bracey says, in light of the U.S. electric vehicle maker's current struggles to renew its portfolio and focus on other segments like robotaxis, acquisitions could be in the cards, Bracey says. Consolidation has been a recurring trend in the global car industry, the analyst says. Beyond Tesla, the lack of strategic value makes deal-making unlikely among U.S.-based car makers. And Waymo has announced its 2024 year-in review. 4 million fully autonomous rides served in 2024, an average of 10,958 paid trips per day. Riders sat for over 11 million hours in Waymo robotaxis, currently performing 150,000 paid trips per week, and Waymo now serves 500 square miles encompassing 4 major metropolitan areas. That doesn't sound like a lot of coverage. Maybe I'm wrong. Nonetheless, today, sentiment is popping back up at least a little bit from yesterday's very low levels. You're up to now a bearish 35, which is still not good, but not as bad as yesterday in the low single digits. Message volume today is high at 69, and the participation ratio is normal at 54. Tesla continues to run about 5,000 different ads with Google, and if we look at Tesla's inventory numbers, things look a-okay here, which has really been a big problem with legacy automakers right now, is the buildup of inventory that we are seeing, especially 2023 and 2024 models that are still unsold as you head into 2025 when car companies are coming out with new models. That's a problem to have, and it doesn't seem like Tesla has that problem right now. What's actually pretty surprising as well is CNN's Fear and Greed Index is sitting at 30 today. The previous close was 33, so CNN's Fear and Greed Index is actually a little bit more fearful today than it was yesterday. Market momentum for the first time in I don't even know how long, at least since August, is actually in fear territory, which is interesting. Stock price strength, extreme fear. Stock price breadth, extreme fear. Put and call options went down from extreme greed to greed. Market volatility is neutral. Safe haven demand is fear, and junk bond demand is in fear as well. So if you are bullish on a year-end rally, that is one thing you could look to and say, hey, markets are pretty fearful right now. What are the odds that we kind of try to brush that off and maybe get back to a neutral or slightly greed level, something more normal for markets? I don't know. It is a possibility. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, we really want to be watching this 430 level for Tesla because that's where you got a lot of demand that started to come in yesterday to actually buy Tesla stock. You actually hit a low at about 426 or so, but really it was in the 430s where volume came in. Currently, Tesla is at $433 per share. If you start to break under that, then 410 is your next level. Really, 411 is the next level. Another volume chunk here, and what looks like some intraday support you've seen on December 12th and December 13th. If you break under all of those levels, 400's a nice round number to watch for support at. And if you don't hold that, your 20-day moving average is at $387.97. Although I think Tesla's gonna be fine. As long as the markets hold up broadly, Tesla's gonna do well. I think today could be just that take a breath kind of day. And then we could be back to some of the same kind of patterns that we've seen previously. Again, as long as PCE comes in good tomorrow, personal income and personal spending, we'll look at that in the next video. But if the markets are not going to freak out and crash, if the markets are going to bounce back from this, then I think Tesla's going to bounce back from this. Now, I'm really not convinced either way. I think Powell was a very much negative catalyst for markets yesterday. He kind of crushed at least the market's bull thesis that the Fed's going to be cutting rates a few more times with a strong economy. There's just a lot of uncertainty with what Powell said, and it's really weird how the markets are digesting this. So we'll see over the coming days what ultimately happens. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this video. Let me know what you think about this down below in the comments section. We'll be back at 8 p.m. to discuss this a little bit more in depth and your catalyst coming tomorrow morning. But with that said, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.